Hello and welcome to Bookworms. It's the show where we read a book, then talk about that book. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm Joe.
How are you, Joe?
Well, I was just contemplating whether we should have a pre-record so we don't have to keep doing this every time and you keep changing it to something kind of weird, like pitching your voice this time.
I'm not pitching my voice. No, I like doing it live. It keeps it fresh, keeps it funky.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll go with that then.
All right, cool. Meeting adjourned.
So yeah, we're here to talk about books. And I picked the book this month.
Yes, you did, you son of a gun.
Yep. And this was the book that I knew Alex was not going to enjoy because I made him read it once in college, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah. And you hated it then. So I figured, hey, this, out of my 8 books, that one book that I picked that I know that other person's not going to like, I said, let's go with an easy one because I know he's not going to like it. So, as we said last month, we're doing another book called Night Watch. This is not to be confused with the Terry Pratchett one we did last season. This is not nearly the same caliber.
Yeah, I think just every season you should find another book called Night Watch.
I looked on Goodreads. There's like 4 of them.
All right,
so
perfect.
we could. I'm thinking next season bonus episode is going to be another Night Watch.
All right, that's a good idea. All right, meeting adjourned. Just I don't know. That's 4 seasons. That's like a Netflix run. That's great.
Yeah, I know.
Actually, Netflix usually it's like 1 season, but yeah, get the idea.
Yeah. Well, also, if you get a second season, it's usually like 4 years later, and everyone's lost interest, so it kind of flops.
Yeah, it's like, come on, Stranger Things. It's been like 3 years since season. Anyway.
Or was Squid Games?
Yeah, that just dropped, didn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, we read Night Watch by Sergei Lukyanenko.
You've been practicing.
Yeah, it's a Russian author. You want to give it a try on the last name?
Lukyanenko.
Lukyanenko.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Sergei.
Sergei.
Sergei?
Sergei.
Sergei.
I think that's how the Russians say it.
Yeah.
Or do they say Sergei?
I don't know. That's a good question. Let us know in the comments.
Oh, our Russian listener.
Yeah. He just writes the name without any emphasis. Just like, it's Sergei. All right then.
Yeah. So I will read the back of this book, and then we will get into it. Others. They walk among us, observing. Set in contemporary Moscow, where shapeshifters, vampires, and street sorcerers linger in the shadows. Night Watch is the first book of the hyper-imaginative fantasy trilogy from best-selling Russian author Sergei Lukyanenko. This epic saga chronicles the eternal war of the Others, an ancient race of humans with supernatural powers who must swear allegiance to either the dark or the light. The agents of light, the Night Watch, oversee nocturnal activity while the agents of dark keep watch over the day. For 1,000 years, both sides have maintained a precarious balance of power, but an ancient prophecy has decreed that a supreme other will one day emerge, threatening to tip the scales. Now that day has arrived, when a mid-level Night Watch agent named Anton stumbles upon a cursed young woman, an uninitiated other with magnificent potential. Both sides prepare for a battle that could lay waste to the entire city, possibly the world. With language that throbs like darkly humorous hard rock lyrics about blood and power, freedom and responsibility, Night Watch is a chilling, cutting-edge thriller, a pulse-pounding ride of fusion fiction that will leave you breathless for the next installment.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think if I had read this back on the thing, back when I originally read this, I probably would have said, nah. But it was recommended to me by a roommate in college, so I just picked it up and read it because he hadn't led me wrong yet. He's the one that introduced me to Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, so can't go wrong there.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like from the back. It's supposed to be this vampire thriller. It's kind of similar to Blade, like the monsters walk among us kind of feel to it.
I kind of got the Butcher and the Wren book, and that their back cover description where it really is over the top, but nothing or very little to do with the actual story. That's why I'm getting kind of reading the back of this for this story.
Yeah, you were talking about like the pulse pounding stuff and language that throbs. I'm like, wow, I'm being lied to right now. This is...
So if you haven't got it, our opinions of this book aren't great. Mine had started off really good when I originally read it. Alex did not like it. Rereading it, I am more in Alex's camp now. But it was definitely fun rereading it just to kind of see how I've grown and how the book has not.
Yeah, this book's like 470 pages, and you could really chop off about 200 of those pages with all the unnecessary exposition and just pointless scenes throughout, and make it a much more tightly written story because it's very long-winded.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem too is this is a translation. The author was born in Kazakhstan, and he obviously writes in Russian, so it's going to be a very different storytelling technique. It's going to be a very different story, and that us Americans are used to. And let's face it, the translator, just my opinion, probably didn't do it justice. Like, I bet you if we were Russian readers, this would be a completely different story where we'd be like, "This is awesome." But again, we're coming from this. This was written in the 1980s, so you were still talking communist Russia, the tail end of that.
Well, it came out in late 90s, I think.
Okay, sorry, I'm reading the back here. He said he started publishing in 1980s, but yeah, came in the 90s, I think. Yeah, I think you're right, 90s.
Yeah, it's like 97.
Okay, but again, so you got post-Soviet Union. It says the American version was published in 2006. But yeah, so again, post-Soviet Union, the author obviously grew up at the tail end of the fall of Russia, the USSR, and it definitely has a lot of not hints, but allusions to that time and how great it was, or not so great at times.
Yeah, the just kind of like that KGB feel where everything's like super secret and you're only told what you need to know, and like everybody's got their own individual kind of plan for what's happening within the story, which I think is kind of well done for the most part. I don't know. I don't have a lot of good things to say about this book, so this isn't going to be a full trash session, but it's going to be damn close to it.
And if you did read this book and you enjoyed it, when I originally read it, there was 4 books in the series. It wasn't a trilogy. There's now 6 books in the series.
Yes, must be doing well.
So yeah, it's doing well enough. I don't know how he keeps going, because basically every book, except for this one, it's hard to like, okay, where do you go next? Because he basically wraps it up well enough that, and by the 4th one, it's like, okay, yeah, he's done. He can't go any higher up in the watches, because he got the night watch, day watch, and then it's like the twilight watch and final watch, and he just keeps going.
Yeah, I guess it must be selling copies.
Yeah. So the book starts off with an approval from the 2 watches, saying that they have both approve of the text of this story. Kind of just, again, like you said, that KGB style or just Soviet Union organ style feel to it. Again, I'm also reading Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago.
Are you still on that one? It's a long book.
It is a long book. It is dense. If I read 10 pages a day, it's a good day.
Yeah, I've noticed I do way better with like those big, thick, dense books. I do way better on audiobook. Just throw it on, drive it around.
Yeah, I would be so lost with audiobook, because a lot of times I'm like, what did I just read? I had to go back and reread it, because it is intense, and but that's a different story. But I guess what I'm saying is that the feel of the beginning of this book, it gives you that feel of, okay, this is Soviet era Russia. Shit is real. You could get locked up and thrown in jail and shipped off to the archipelago at any moment and just be disappeared, and basically, or just shot in a basement, for smiling at the wrong moment at the wrong person, or not smiling at the wrong moment at the wrong person.
Yeah.
But this is so it starts off with again, both watches giving permission to say, yeah, this is okay text to release to the public.
Yeah, it's a good little, just like, I don't know, it was like when you're like acting like, oh, this text was written by the characters kind of feel to it. You see that a lot in books.
Yeah, so it just kind of gives that feel. So we start off in part 1 where we meet Anton, we start off with a prologue where we meet, what's his name?
Igor.
And who sees Anton, and he's trying to, he feels like he's being hunted, and he's running away, and the prologue ends with him basically being eaten by a female vampire. Flashback to Anton on that said train, who's following Igor.
Yeah, he's got a talisman that like you can use to ward off vampires. But before he meets Igor, which this book I don't know if it's a translation thing. There's two characters named Igor. One's spelled with an E, one's spelled with an I. That's fun. But anyway.
This book, at points, there were so many characters thrown at you, I'm like, I have no clue who this is anymore.
Yeah, he's got a big secondary character problem in this.
And a lot of them have no difference between them, or such little difference between them, because they just aren't expanded on, because they're just randomly pop in and out. And
there's like Tiger Paw or whatever her name is, and Bear somebody or other.
Yeah, well, you got those two, which kind of are self-explanatory. But then you have like the three. I kind of refer to them as the Three Stooges. You have the good-looking one, the one that actually helps Anton out, and then it's just some other random one, and it's this the one that rides around on a motorcycle all the time.
Yeah, they're all just like, here's one character trait about you, and here you go, get into the book.
Yeah, so that was rather annoying. I had to keep stopping and going back, like, who is this again? Why do I care?
So Anton is traveling.
He's searching for a potential. Well, he's searching for a rogue vampire.
Yeah, he's part of what's called the Night Watch, which is kind of weird because the Night Watch is like the guardians of good because they watch the night, and there's also the Light Watch on the other side, which they're all like evil, but they're watching the light and they're trying to ultimately, like, they're kind of jockeying for power at all times, but their also ultimate goal is to maintain some sort of balance of good and evil.
They must have the balance of the Force.
Yes, they must keep the Force in balance, otherwise all sorts of malarkey happens and the world ends.
And we'll get into it later, I'm sure, but as you learn more about good versus evil and then human nature in this story, it gets kind of muddled up, but you just kind of, I was rolling my eyes at times. I don't know about you, Alex, but
oh yeah, like when they first started talking about the nature of good and evil and like human souls, how they're both I'm like, oh, this is a really good observation, this is really neat, and then he keeps doing it over and over again.
It's kind of juvenile, I think.
Yeah, he never, he just keeps repeating the same stuff. He never fully dives deep into it.
I feel like the other more renowned Russian authors do a much better job.
Yeah, he's like trying to pull a Dostoevsky on like the observance of the human soul, and he's way off.
Yeah,
so,
it's. Yeah. But again, we're not expecting that from a urban fantasy writer.
Yeah, he's
trying contemporary fantasy writer, as they call him now.
He's trying to write an urban fantasy thriller. It's a lot different from a speculation on the human condition.
But at the same time, if you're going to throw that in there, you kind of want to dig a little deeper than the surface level you barely scratched at. So, anyways, we're jumping ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, we keep coming back to the beginning. But yeah, he's got this talisman to help him fight.
Where do we start, Alex? Right at the end.
Yes, there you go. But yeah, he's got this talisman to help him fight vampires, but he sees a woman with a weird sort of vortex above her head,
and it's huge. It's like, this is like catastrophe waiting to happen. A lot of people are gonna die. I gotta save this woman.
Yeah, and she appears troubled, so he uses the talisman to shrink the vortex a little bit.
We try to knock it off because that will dissipate it if he can knock it off for her, and even if it goes to another person, it'll get a lot smaller. Well, it just rebounds right back and continues going. So he's like, oh. But he sees he sees Igor, who he knows he has to follow because he's being called by the vampire. So he has to basically take a mental image of this woman's aura and follow Igor and save the little boy's life.
Yeah, it's also really hard to get into this book because this is kind of a good thing that he does. Like, he doesn't pander to the audience, or he doesn't assume they're stupid. Like, the good writers, they don't front load with exposition on when there's supernatural stuff going on. There's well, my character knows this, he's not going to stop and explain it to everybody when there's action going on. So he is good at that, because it took a while to figure out what's the Twilight, what's the Night Watch, what's the Light Watch. So I think he did a good job with that, and I'll give him that.
Okay. I said it's not a terrible book. It's just it's not for a mature reader, I would say. I think someone a teenage. This is a kind of book the teenager range would enjoy probably. Yeah, before YA was YA, and you're just grabbing a random book off the shelf in the fantasy section. This would be a 15 to 25-year-old who's not really into hard literature would be like, yeah, this sounds like a good fun ride.
Yeah, the sophomore philosophy student who's wants a little thought in his action, but he doesn't want to dive too deep.
I wouldn't even go that far. I'd say more is just the immature teenage boy, we'll say. So one thing he does also, what Anton does, is he's always listening to music. He's got his little mini disc a little dating the book a little bit. I mean, this is high technology for Russia, I think, at the time, but we were already switching over to MP3 players. I think by the time this book came out, we were past the mini discs. That was a flash in the pan.
Yeah, it was. I used CDs in the 90s.
Yeah.
So.
But he's always listening to music. And normally, I hate it when they mention music and do song lyrics because, well, one, it dates you. Two, often the songs are what the author likes, and typically they suck. It's not really to my general taste. But this being Russian, and like we were talking about earlier, Alex, you're looking up, are these actual real bands and real songs? And of course, I just looked at at the credits to say, he's having to give credit to all the songs he filched off the Russian band sites.
And that's like a very Stephen King thing to do. Also, just like take songs you like and throw them into your book somehow.
Yeah. So I've always hated that.
He's pulling a Stephen King with that.
But it's for this book, it kind of works just because I am unfamiliar with all the songs. There is no.
Yeah, I'm trying to find ways where they kind of tangentially tie in somehow, and
of course the songs don't make any sense because again they're translations, so they don't have a rhyming scheme necessarily, and they don't. You don't have the beat to go with it, so you're just
this does not read like a top 40 hit. What is this?
But at least he got the songs that almost kind of match up to the scenario he's going through or the feelings he's feeling, and. I thought it was in this book, but in later books it's explained that the reason why he always he puts his tracks on random on his mini disc, and the song he always plays always ends up matching his mood. And the later book explains that that's because your powers are subconsciously choosing the songs that you want.
That always turns into Queen's greatest hits.
So again, I read the first 4 books of the series, and so I'm kind of
God bless you.
Yeah. The cobwebs were shaken off when I was reading this book, but I was still like, I think this was in the second book or the third book.
Yeah, so then getting back into the story. Anton sees Igor getting bitten by the vampire, but he's used his talisman to help the woman, so it doesn't work, so he has to resort to violence. So he kills one of the vampires, he frightens the girl vampire away, saves Igor. Igor also runs away, and he overall thinks he's done a good job.
And his boss says, "You're a dumbass."
And that's the one joke I laughed at, even though you could see it coming from a mile away. Like the chapter 1 ends with I think I did a good job, and then chapter 2 starts with his boss going sloppy work. So his boss is Boris. What's his name? Yeah, Boris.
Yeah, that's one of these. So Russian names. That's the other problem with all these names. Russian names are complicated. So you have your formal name, then you have your familiar name, and he switches between them. Constantly.
His other name is Gaysar, something like that. And there's also as a sign of respect, you say their full name, so he keeps using his last name as well. You see that in a lot of Russian literature. They throw the whole name in there.
Yeah, but it just added to the confusion because you got already too many characters, then you're adding all these other names. You're like, hey, who's this guy again?
Yeah, and it's one of those your generic 90s era buddy cop thing where you're reckless, you're out of control, I'm giving you a partner, and his partner is an owl.
Yeah, who's also a drop-dead gorgeous babe.
Yeah. I pulled out. This is a good time to do this. I pulled out what I call bad sentences or bad attempts at humor in this book.
Okay.
I'm going to read them now because one of them is when he first meets Olga.
Yeah, well, before we do that, I got one that we're kind of making fun of. You're saying the sophomore philosophy students looking for something easy to read. I had a quote that I pulled out here that kind of epitomizes that. So here we go. Many years ago, someone told me something that I flatly refused to accept, and I still don't accept it now, despite all the times I've seen it proved right. The common good and the individual good rarely coincide. Sure, I know, it's true, but some truths are probably worse than lies.
There you go. What's so civil about war anyway? But anyway,
just going with your bad sentences, just bad philosophy.
Yeah. All right. So when I'll introduce the first 2, and then I'll just kind of randomly drop the last 3 because we've covered these ones already. So when Anton or Igor is getting attacked and they pull the female vampire off of him, she was out of her mind now, like a desperate junkie who stuck the needle in her vein only to have it jerked back out again, or like a nymphomaniac after her man pulled out just a moment before orgasm. And then
very immature humor.
Then when he first meets Olga, I had a partner I couldn't even talk to. In the second place, my partner was a woman.
Yeah. There's a lot of questionable comments about women in this.
Yeah, this book is wildly sexist, by the way.
It's Russian, so what do you expect?
Yeah. This one goes into your philosophy thing. The dead can do more than rip off heads. They can love, too. This one's just a name drop. His name was Maxim. Not such a very unusual name, but not ordinary either. Not like all those Sergeys. And I have one more. And this one's in part 2, right after Anton and Olga switch bodies. Olga says, "You're really lucky, Anton." "How's that?" "1 week later, and I'd have had to teach you to use panty liners." And that's how he chooses to end that chapter, by the way.
Yeah. Said immature boys will love this story.
So yeah, Olga. Olga's an owl.
Yeah, she's an owl. She's a sorceress that was cursed for fucking up something, which we learn at the end was a big fuck up, which we'll get to that. But basically, she's told she has to stay as an owl, except for rare instances where she's allowed to become human. It's so random. It's almost
She gets essentially like a half hour here and there to take a shower, drink some scotch, and then turn back into an owl.
Yeah.
But like that's how I think that's just there so Anton can get to know his partner a little bit. Otherwise, it's just an owl that he can communicate with like telepathically. So yeah, we meet Olga. I would have thought she'd factor into the story a lot more. She kind of fades away, but she's
she really doesn't do much.
Yeah.
It's
She's a
kinda
big
disappointing.
yeah. She's a big thing on just kind of learning what's the history of the Night Watch because she's like 400 years old.
Yeah.
But she and Anton eventually, he's upset because she's a woman, but eventually he learns she's also a person too, and they kind of bond a little bit.
And they become friends with no sexual attachment.
Yes. There's they're platonic friends, hetero life mates.
Yeah. Which he keeps commenting about and reminding us that there's, even though she's a very attractive woman, he has no sexual interest in her because it's all about Svetlana there.
Oh, Svetlana?
Svetlana, yeah. Who is, we find out is the woman with a giant vortex over her head.
Yeah, so they spend a little bit of time trying to find Igor. They find him. They kind of tell him a little bit like, what is the Night Watch? What is the Twilight?
Yeah, so we get kind of an info dump there.
Yeah, and Igor's I wish he was more of a compelling character because they just abuse the shit out of him the entire time. Like he's just a tool for.
He's just a whiny little bitch.
Yeah, he's just a tool that they use because he has the power of all these guys. But he's
basically they find out that he's going to be a very weak magician.
Yeah, but the thing that's interesting about him is he's neutral.
Yeah,
and he seems to be resistant to joining either side. Normally, you join a side almost as soon as you find out you have the powers. So it's interesting that he's neutral.
Yeah, and so we get deeper into the whole light versus dark, and it's very Jedi versus Sith. It's basically just a Star Wars ripoff.
Yeah, just finding balance in the Force is essentially what it is.
And it's like the light is all about, and it also comes down to communism versus capitalism. I mean, it's the light is all about the better, the greater good. What's gonna you'll sacrifice yourself for the pride of knowing you saved everybody else, where the darkness it's all about you and bettering yourself and becoming more powerful and stealing other people's power and life force, or aka wealth. And so the dark ones end up and the Twilight end up looking more like demons the longer they live, where the light, the Night Watch, the light guys look more like angels. So again, just that whole it's all very surface level. It doesn't really, a lot of it doesn't make sense, and they have these endless roundabout philosophical conversations with each other and with their adversaries about the pros and cons of each side and which side is better, and it's all very cordial. And
like Anton does something for the sake of good, and he's approached by the Light Watch, who say to maintain balance they get to do some minor evil without being impeded. And so there's this whole back and forth thing that it really drags the story down in the end.
Yeah, so initially it's kind of like you're learning this whole new magic system, so it feels kind of neat.
Yeah, I really liked part one. I'm like, oh wow, maybe a better appraisal of this. This is actually kind of cool.
Yeah,
like all these philosophical conversations. It's fun.
Yeah, so part one you're reading is like, yeah, this is really, really good. I don't know why Alex didn't like this the first time around. And so you're learning a lot, and it's fairly fast-paced part one. It's the largest part, and it probably read the quickest.
Yeah, because like right after he finds Igor, he then finds Svetlana, and he finds out he's got the ability to shrink the vortex just by talking to her.
Because they are soulmates.
Yes, he's doing something that no one else has done to Svetlana, which is show empathy, not just pity or sympathy, but he's actually like
Which is funny because
relating to her.
They sent the horn dog magician after her, and the vortex grew exponentially when he was hitting on her.
Yeah, and we find out like she's like under a spell from the Light Watch because they made her mother sick, and then she feels guilty about her mother being sick, and that creates the vortex.
And what it comes down to at the conclusion of each of the three parts is these over-the-top plans of trying to outmaneuver someone else that are just so ridiculous. You're like, why? And it's basically that the author trying to sound smarter.
Yeah, the plans are all just elaborate and convoluted and very confusing. Like Igor's being used somehow to like draw Anton in, and they're going to try and corrupt Igor, and like the whole like it, and you know, create just a little bit of tilt towards the dark.
Yeah, so it feels like the author's trying to say how much smarter he is than the reader in these things, because again, they're just so over the top. And he writes Anton so stupid. Like Anton is like, I'm reading it, I'm like, it said, I read this before, so I had an idea, but I'm like, it said right here, this is what's going to happen, and you completely go in a random direction that makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. You're coming up with these random conclusions that come out of nowhere.
Yeah, don't ignore the foreshadowing. Come on. But yeah, so it kind of ends weird, but it's gonna.
So basically what happens is they figure out how to get rid of the vortex, and there's this big battle between, or is that part?
Yeah, there's a rooftop battle.
Yeah, that's part one, right?
Yeah,
the rooftop battle between.
He likes rooftop battles in his book.
Boris and the head of the Day Watch. I forget Zabulon.
Yeah, Zabulon.
And basically, Boris does a body switch with another one of the weaker magicians to hide his identity from Zabulon before the battle starts, and they start doing this big battle, and then they basically comes out in a draw, but
but that's what they wanted.
Yeah, that's what they wanted. But then the Day Watch that got the free minor curse comes in and says, I get to do my free curse now, and she basically gets to say something to tell Anton, from now on you have to hear the truth or tell the truth or something along those lines.
Yeah,
because
then he tells Igor that the Night Watch was using him to further their
vampires.
Games. Yeah, luring the vampires, and that he was just a tool, and that kind of just slightly brings Igor into the dark side.
Which is, they make it sound like it's going to be this big thing, but again, he's a very weak magician. They say he's like one of the lowest levels where he probably wouldn't even be worth anything anyways.
Yeah, he keeps coming back, and like there's three like separate, they're not quite standalone stories, but they're
all interconnected.
Yeah, they're all there's a overarching story arc, but there's also there's essentially three novellas that are connected with an overarching arc. Yes. And he keeps coming back in them, and he keeps getting used, but he keeps maintaining his neutrality.
And another thing that Anton points out is it's kind of weird how the dark side, the Day Watch, is very big about telling the truth, where the good guys are always lying because they feel like the people that they're working with or talking to can't handle the truth, that they can't handle being used or whatever. And it's like it makes us feel very backwards, but Anton doesn't really question it for very long. He's like, oh, that's just the way it is. That's what the boss does. And it's like, no, that's not a good sign of a good boss. For a good guy is to be lying to all of his people and tricking them and throwing them into bad situations with no forewarning.
Yeah, this isn't really an open door operation here. He's very secretive. But yeah, we start getting into part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
And then there's a serial killer this time.
Yeah, this is the Maxim guy.
Yeah, Maxim, not Sergei. Maxim.
Yeah, and he's going around killing weak, dark wizards and vampires.
Yeah, and
so Anton and Olga have to swap bodies because Olga apparently got her curse lift finally.
Yeah, and the Light Watch is Day Watch, right?
Day Watch.
Day Watch is convinced that someone from the Night Watch is committing the murders, and guess who doesn't have an alibi for any of the murders? Anton. So they want to try and set it up so that a murder happens when Olga's in Anton's body, and then Anton's in Olga's body, and he's with Svetlana the entire time, and that way he has a solid alibi when a murder happens.
And of course, he still ends up having no alibi when said murder happens, even though he's with Yeah, because he goes to the bathroom to.
Yeah, because Svetlana doesn't know right away that he's in Olga's body, and she lets it slip that she loves Anton.
Yeah, so they had to go to a restaurant because they're having a lover's tiff.
Yeah, they're talking it out, and they're having more philosophical debates, and they're kind of...
We also learned Svetlana's going to become a sorceress. So Anton has the foreknowledge that because she's going to be super strong and he's just an average level 3 magician.
His ceiling is level 2.
Yeah, well, it keeps going up as the story goes on, and they don't explain it until book 2 or 3.
Yeah, I was getting the impression that Anton's way stronger than he's left on.
Yeah, so basically they explain it in like book 2 or 3 why he gets stronger, but it's because of something that happens at the end of book 1, which we'll get to. So, but anyways, and apparently because again the author is a little sexist, can't have a stronger woman in a stronger position of power above you, so therefore Svetlana, who's going to become one of the most powerful beings in the universe, is going to all of a sudden leave him in the dust, and he's just going to be bitter and resentful, and he knows this, so he's bitter and resentful that how can I love you so much and then just knowing I'm going to lose you, and Svetlana's like, I don't understand why you treat me like shit.
Yeah, they argue. He's definitely still get that vibe that there's a mutual love for each other.
Yeah, you say they
definitely. He never comes out and says it, even though he knows that she loves him. But yeah, they go to dinner and they notice there's a evil magician there
with his family that's not magically.
Yeah, and he goes off to the bathroom and he's gone for a while, and so Anton is Olga. He's like, let me go check on this.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, he's dead, and she's right over the body.
Yep.
So
the dark wizards.
That plan.
The dark wizards start trying to take him into custody. He decides to run for it, so they're blasting at him. And
I gotta say, like, once Anton and Olga swap back, that's kind of when I lose interest in the book, because I think that's like the last interesting thing that happens is the body swap.
Yeah. Of course, Igor just randomly pops back again, and.
Yeah, Igor comes back in, and again, like Anton, as in Olga's body, talks to him, and they kind of like make up for what happened in the last book, and
just for it to all be ruined again.
Yeah, yeah, poor Igor. But yeah, they swap back. During the car chase scene, there's a bit where Anton gets in the car with the actual murderer, Maxim, who helps him get away.
What pissed me off was Svetlana gets a reading of Maxim's wife's aura, and it is shared among all the operatives, including Anton. He's literally in the car with this woman and completely doesn't even like look at their auras. He's always looking at everyone's auras all the time, no matter what.
Yeah, it's like cops just sitting there reading your plates.
It's like he literally, like the author keeps hammering home, he's always looking at auras. The moment he gets in the car with the killer and his wife, doesn't check their auras. Just like, nope, get me out of here.
And he can like blame it on the intensity of the scene, but in
other intense scenes he's checking their auras.
Yeah, he's just kind of like on all the time.
Yeah,
but he doesn't in this case for reasons, and so
so he gets out of that, and then he's like convinced that Zabulon is behind all this, and he's
like Zabulon's attempt to get revenge on Anton for foiling their plans.
Yeah,
in the first book.
And he keeps like, I know it's a trap, therefore I have to walk into the trap because I know it's a trap.
Yeah, if I know it's a trap, then I know it's fine.
And it's like, what are you doing? So he goes into the Daywatch's field headquarters, spies on them after he kills another dark agent, thus, making himself look even more guilty. Figures out that they're trying to quarter him down, and instead of saying, hey, I can slip this the noose here and just get outside their cordon, I'm going to go right into the last area because it's where Igor lives, and therefore that's where they're trying to drive me because there's something going on here. And that's where I embarrassed Zabulon last time, so therefore he's trying to send me back there. It's like, but it makes no sense for you to go there, you twat. So at this point he realizes Igor's basically turned dark side.
Yeah, he's leaning that way.
Yeah. But he hasn't officially named it yet. But apparently Maxim can still see that he's leaning that way and wants to kill him. But so there's a big confrontation between Anton and Maxim where they have these arguments. And basically there's a fight. Nobody dies. Eventually Boris shows up. Takes credit for the whole operation. He's like, oh yeah, we knew about him, but we were trying to...
Yeah, they didn't want to kill him because he has unique powers.
Yeah.
So
he ends up going to a whole other organization that oversees the two watches that we didn't really know about, as kind of a adjudicator, because he's kind of viewed himself as the judge and executioner.
Judge, Judy, and executioner.
Yep.
But yeah, he's it kind of anticlimactic ending.
Yeah,
you just kind of find out the Night Watch was behind this. The Day Watch had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And again, Igor got kind of used.
Yeah. So we get into part 3, and it's Dog Days of Summer, and Boris says, "Everyone go on vacation. We're emptying out the whole Moscow office."
And they have a big old party, and there's a lot of just
drunkenness and sex.
There's multiple chapters of just drinking and partying.
And Svetlana sleeps with the ladies' man guy behind Anton's back because Anton won't sleep with her, and she's like, "I'm horny. Somebody's got I need someone's touch, and you won't do it. God damn it."
He's freaking out because he feels like since she's getting more powerful, they're starting to drift apart. It's kind of like when your wife starts to make more money than you do, you got to flip out at her and be like, "Oh, you're not who you used to be." That's a joke, of course. Please don't cancel me.
Cancel him, people. Cancel him. He's an asshole.
But so he's kind of being so he's starting to kind of retreat within himself.
He's getting sulky. He's getting to be just a sulky little bitch.
He's going emo. And it's kind of drives the second part of part 3 with some of the choices he makes.
And then we also get a little breakaway where Boris is meeting with this agent from another part of Russia that's not supposed to be there, who's looking for protection, but he also has this piece of chalk that's very important.
Yes, the magic chalk.
The chalk of destiny.
Yeah. So he gets attacked, and his son escapes with the chalk. And,
But so they got that, and basically Boris emptied out the office because he wanted no witnesses. Again, lying to his subordinates about what's going on because they're trying to get basically Svetlana to change destiny, to rewrite fate. And we learned that the white side does this quite often, and always in catastrophe. They're to blame for World War II, World War I, the Russian Revolution, the American Revolution. Basically, anytime there's a lot of death, you can blame the light side trying to make the world a better place through lots of murdering.
Yeah, it's like I'm watching a show called Grimm, and I just saw this part where it's all the beasts and creatures from folks and fairy tales live among us, and we found out Hitler was actually a werewolf the whole time. I was like, that's the stupidest plot I've ever seen. Anyway, it's similar to that, just outside forces are having a big impact on the human world, and we see that whenever there's an altercation, the people around them start behaving erratically and acting irrationally throughout the story. When in the dinner scene when Zabulon's trying to question Anton, and there's this whole kerfuffle, everybody starts eating with their hands and throwing their food and doing stuff like that. So a lot of this has to do with how these people impact the normal people, the Mundies.
Yeah, and we also learned that the reason why Olga got the curse on her was because she was supposed to have changed destiny and didn't do it right because of her love for Boris, and they had this big love affair. And it wasn't quite. I wasn't quite certain what time frame that this was supposed to be in. It kind of sounded like Russian Revolution. Was what she caused to fall apart for communism. But it also sound like it was just a total dud of a thing, but basically because she failed to write destiny just right, they punished her. So they're gonna have Svetlana do this, and Boris is trying to tell her what to write and to do write it just so that it works out. And then because she writes in this book of destiny, this book of fate, she'll also ascend to the sorceress level, which is basically a magician beyond power, and basically a fusion bomb. We're talking hydrogen bomb here that you can just blow up at will and destroy all evil, and everyone can live happily ever after in their graves, because that's how the light works apparently.
But yeah, I don't know, there's it happens on another rooftop too, this final scene where they rewrite the book of history, and a hurricane's kind of forming over them as they do it. Some cool imagery.
This was 100 pages out of the 450 pages, and it was so slow to get through because nothing happens. It's just nothing is going on.
Yeah, book 3 is a slog.
Yeah.
Because again, it's the party stuff is like really boring. It's like then we drink vodka, and then we drink more vodka, and then we drink more vodka.
And
And then I saw my girlfriend sleeping with someone.
Yeah,
and
we
I drank
talk
some vodka.
philosophy and just debate with each other, and then we watch an orgy on the couch, and then we decide we want to give them privacy, so we go back to drinking more vodka and talking philosophy. But yeah, and Anton is going a little crazy here because he's just throwing off magic, basically almost going dark side on them.
Yeah, he's making kind of selfish, erratic decisions to try and like save Svetlana from herself or whatever.
Yes. So the conclusion of this one is Svetlana decides not to write anything and she erases something, but they don't say what.
Yeah, they notice the chalk has been used because it's a little bit smaller, but it's she in the end kind of keeps the timeline as it is.
Yeah.
And then they really only noticed two things got kind of changed a little bit, which is Igor is back to being neutral, and Olga
was missing.
Yeah.
Through the whole thing, and they're like, "What happened to Olga?" And that's when Boris reveals, "Oh, we broke the chalk in two because chalk is really easy to break into two, and she wrote something instead." So she finished what she was supposed to do, and as I said, in later books we learned that basically part of what she did was make Anton stronger. So this is why Anton went from a level 3 to a level 2, and then they're saying, "Oh, maybe you're a level 1 now." Basically, she makes him into a sorcerer.
Okay, that's interesting. That makes sense. All right, and like they also they fix Olga's past to take away the bad thing she did, and then that was kind of Boris's idea because Olga and Boris are in love, and
they want to have life together. But because now Anton's just as strong as Svetlana, they can stay together, and
love lifts us up where we belong.
Yeah, but yeah, so that was
that's where it ends. That's Night Watch.
Yeah, as it said, if you left it at part 1, book 1, it probably would have been a good book. You could expand it out a little bit longer, flesh it out a little bit more. But yeah, it's halfway, like you said, halfway through book 2, it started dragging hard, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I was expecting more like car chases, mowing down vampires. That's what Sergei Lukyanenko is known for being a action thriller writer, so I was not expecting this slow of pacing. And it's kind of like when you watch like the Marvel movies or something like that. They get so sucked into like the green screen special effects stuff that they lose a lot of the action aspects of stories, especially in the later movies, because they're just turning everything into a CGI nightmare. It's like what he was doing with like the Twilight stuff, and it's all just special effects on the page and a lot less like, this guy's getting punched in the face. This is so cool.
Yeah, and the magic was very inconsistent what they could and couldn't do. Like Anton is, like in the last part, is just sucking in all this power till he's about ready to burst and blow up the city, and just stealing it from everyone else. Again, pulling a dark side trick, just stealing from it, everyone's joy, and then he just dissipates it. Does absolutely nothing with it.
Yeah, a lot of stuff kind of goes nowhere. Like, it's like Olga
and
becomes
Igor
more of a
gets
secondary
screwed over
character.
Again.
Yeah, Igor just keeps getting screwed over. So, like, characters you think would be bigger from part 1 kind of just fade away. And it's really just all about Anton and Boris, essentially.
And Maxim did show up, too, because he was watching the whole thing, the Book of Fate being rewritten. He's basically the judge now for all that, making sure that both sides stay in their lanes.
Yeah, he is the people's court.
Yes. So in that bit where Sergei kept bringing everybody back, keeping everyone semi-relevant that he introduced, I get that you're supposed to do that. It just, there was way too many, and you lost, basically any depth for anybody other than Anton and Svetlana, and basically two people you didn't really want to get to know any better because they kind of, well, Svetlana you might want to get to know better, but her being a woman, that didn't really count, according to Anton.
Yeah, Svetlana, Olga, Anton, and Boris are like the 4 main characters, but it's all just kind of through Anton's eyes.
Yeah.
There's a few scenes where he's not the main narrator that's told in third person, but yeah, overall it's him. But you think Igor would have been bigger because he's the first character you see, but it's whatever. Sometimes they do that little switcheroo.
Yeah, so I kind of put it off as like a darker version of the Dresden Files, where that's kind of campy and goofy, and attempt at humor. This was just very, not quite grimdark, but it was just darker. It was, again, that Soviet shadow of Mother Russia and the communist step in march there, where just everything's a little bit darker and grimier than what we would expect in the West.
Yeah, it's like it all takes place in Moscow, so it's like, wow, Moscow's a bit of a hole, isn't it?
Yeah. Everyone's poor and drunk.
Wow, Moscow in the 90s was not a fun place to be.
Probably wasn't, since they were kind of in a major depression, but
It's like, I'm going through a change, okay?
yeah, so that's Night Watch.
Anyway, Sergei Lukyanenko. It's probably going to be the only book I ever read by him, so
Yeah,
I'm glad I got it
I'm
twice.
not going to reread his other books anytime soon, that's for sure. This is just rereading this. And I remember it was diminishing returns as you went further in the series. I do remember that. I remember getting to the final watch. I'm like, I'm just reading this because I want to finish the series now. And
Yeah, I bet you that at least those last two were just cash grabs.
yeah, I imagine so. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the translations, Alex? I know I kind of gave my thoughts on it, where it was kind of rough at times, but
Yeah, I wonder who translated that one.
hold on, I had it a moment ago. Andrew Bromfield.
Okay, so we have different editions, but we were reading the same translation. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think he did all right. I mean, a lot of the times with translations, doesn't really how good and flowing the text is in its mother language. Translation's gonna be a little stilted, so I think that happened in this book. I don't think like if I spoke fluent Russian and could read it, I probably would not enjoy the book still. I would argue. Like there's other translations I read that have that kind of stilted dialogue and setups for action, which I do enjoy. Like I feel like the translations of like Alexander Dumas are really good, but I think this is just like a workmanship kind of thing. So
Well, you're also talking popular fantasy versus actual literature. They're going to put a little bit more money into the actual literature side of things, where the popular fantasy is like, this might succeed in the U.S., it might not, so let's go below average of the road here.
Yeah, it's a big deal when you get to like translate the Count of Monte Cristo, but translating Night Watch, like no offense, but it's not as prestigious.
Yeah. Did you feel like in the question of good versus evil, did the author actually answer any of his questions?
I don't think so. I think he left a lot of that up for the debate of the reader, like internal debate.
Well, I didn't even think he left it up to the debate. I think he just put it as that there is no answer, so just keep arguing and just go in circles.
Yeah, essentially. Like this is the same side of the coin, or different side of the coin, but the it's just kind of whatever. like we said, like the first couple times, like it's like, wow, this is kind of hitting. I bet he's gonna dig really deep, and then he never really digs deep, and he just talks in circles, and it gets just like, oh god, again on this shit. Just put it away and kill somebody.
Being that it's a Russian novel, did you find the storytelling to be any different?
Having like the three like setups and like because you read the first third of the book and the story's over, and then there's another book. Kind of, we were talking about before the show. I kind of compared it to John Dies at the End, because that's three separate parts that's connected with an overarching story, and like it's kind of a similar deal.
You wish it ended at book one.
Yeah, it should have ended a lot sooner. It's just jarring when you get to page 150. All of a sudden, it's like a whole new storyline going on, and it's hard to maneuver like that, because it's supposed to be this consistent build, like like how the story works, the rising action, then the falling action, and it keeps going up and up and up, and then you get the climax and comes down, and you get the denouement and a resolution.
Have you read a lot of like Asian literature?
Not a whole lot, like a little bit here and there.
I've read a little bit here and there also, and it definitely is a different style to telling the story, and different techniques of writing, even with the translations, if they've been done well.
Yeah, like I think most of the like Japanese stuff, I read a lot of manga, and I think that storytelling's different because it's serialized and just goes on and on forever and ever. But
it's also manga, so I mean it's a completely different form there, Alex.
Yeah, especially those longer stories, like they have some big lulls in the action. Yeah. But I don't know. I've read other. I don't want to compare it to the classic Russian literature stuff, but I have read other Russian books, and it tells a complete story. This is three novellas kind of jammed together and tied in a fancy knot to keep it all as one, but it's a little bit different. It feels different.
Have you read any of the Dresden Files?
I've not.
Right. You read The Witcher, though, the first book, there, right?
I did. That's I know that's like a collection of short stories.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like, I guess, have you read a lot of urban fantasy? I guess I'm trying to get, how compared to other urban fantasies or fantasies of a similar ilk?
I have not read a lot of urban fantasy, no.
Okay. What are you waiting for, Alex?
Yeah, that's a genre I should really look more into.
There's a lot of garbage there, but
Yeah, I think the Jason Parsig, David Wong stuff is really the only urban fantasy I've read, and that's more of a horror comedy kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
So that's vastly different as far as writing style goes,
Yeah.
even if it is urban fantasy by general definition.
What were some of the problems that we haven't covered that you saw with the novel?
Let me see. We got bad writing. We had plotting storylines because like the pacing in this book is a severe issue. It's
going backwards. Basically,
yeah.
if you had book 1 as book 3, you would have, with that epic climax, you would have been like, okay, that worked. But being that book 3 was the most anticlimactic out of the 3 stories, you're kind of left like, oh, that's it?
Yeah, just having the up, down, up, down, up, down of the 3 books, like it's clunky already, and then also you're padding it out with the same conversation you've been having the entire book that could have been handled in maybe 2 philosophical debates where Anton has to justify his stance on things, once or twice, rather than several major, long periods of dialogue throughout the book that just really slog it down. Like the 3rd one especially, like there's no plot until halfway through. You gotta really plow it through it, and that's just it's like you're just trying to hit a page count at that point.
Yeah.
It's
You
clunky.
start getting more plot holes, like I said, with the whole magic system. Also, he had a pretty rigid magic system in book 1, and by book 3, it was just loosey goosey, do whatever you want, and then also nothing is ever truly resolved at the end of these. It's just like, oh yeah, life continues. So this may be the ending of the story, but that's not really an ending. It's like, but that's the whole point of a story is to have an ending. I mean, everyone knows that. Life goes on.
And I do like it sometimes when the bad guy doesn't get their comeuppance. Sometimes that works out really well. I'll use old movie example. It's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Potter steals their money. Nothing happens to him. He's fine. But
Dostoevsky did one of those ones too.
Was that?
Dostoevsky did that too. Remember?
Oh, which one?
Was it? It's the one where the guy murders someone but doesn't get caught and he goes crazy.
Oh, Crime and Punishment?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, he turns himself in at the end as to, alleviate his guilt. But, he would have gotten away with it if he hadn't. Yeah, but that's vastly different.
Or let's go stick with Russian authors here. I mean,
yeah. Or, Judy Blume does that a lot with characters just kind of get away with bad shit. Yeah. And it's just, up to the protagonist to try and figure it out from there.
Yeah, last question here. How did the magic system land for you? How does it compare to others you've read, and was it logical in the way the author wrote the rules for it, or did it work in the world?
I feel like it just kind of worked out to suit the story as it needed to. The whole aspect of the Twilight, it's like, I don't really understand how this really fits into the story at all when you finally look at the whole thing as a whole. Maybe it becomes a bigger thing in future books, but I feel like the Twilight itself, going into another dimension where you're kind of invisible to the outside world, it's you're there but they don't notice you, and whatnot, the whole idea of getting lost in the twilight and things like that. It's it sounds cool, but it's it doesn't really impact and it's kind of a motivation for them to keep going, but it doesn't really impact anything that happens in the story. So I would have liked to see more Twilight in the book.
I thought the actual magic system was very black and white until the end, and then all of a sudden it just changed all the rules to, oh yeah, you can, Anton's performing black magic and again, no consequences.
Yeah, I think that's it kind of fits in that whole philosophical debate. Humans aren't good or evil; they're a little bit of both. And Anton is showing very human emotions all of a sudden at the end of the book because he's freaking out over Svetlana. But it's by that point, I was my eyes were glazed over. I'm like, well, don't do this anymore.
I guess I didn't really. It was fun learning about the magic system in part 1, book 1. But again, by the end I was I don't care anymore. And you're breaking all the rules and to fit the story and fit the plot, move the plot along. And so I felt there's a lot of other magic systems that do it better. I have read all the Dresden Files, the main books anyways, and it is a very rigid system of, okay, here's how this works. And there's a lot of slop in there. But we have an explanation for that too. Of there's more than one kind of magic system working at here, and
there's also a lot of Deus Ex Machina in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's like the chalk is essentially just hand delivered, because like to them, and like he just happens to have the talisman that can thwart the vampires at the beginning of the book. So he's always got that thing that he needs to do what he
that was always
has.
explained by Boris is just so smart and so old that he has planned everything for a century in advance. Which again, it's like there's too much randomness to be able to do that, as Anton's basically an agent of chaos for both sides, where he's just throwing everything up to the wind, and it's like you can't plan for half the stuff he does. And again, he's so moronic, and maybe they can because he is so moronic. He just follows along exactly as they want him to. But yeah, it's like if you read these kind of books, you're screaming at it like, why are you doing it this way? Stop being stupid. Your conclusion makes no sense because it came out of thin air and doesn't follow any of the facts that were presented to us from your mind.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just kind of getting lost in the weeds at the end, for sure.
I originally rated this 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's down to like a 2.5.
Yeah, I kept it at 1. I read part 1. I'm like, oh, I might bump this up to a 3. This is good. No, I'm going to keep it at 1.
Yeah, I said part 1 was definitely a solid 3.5. But I said halfway through part 2, you lose it. Like you said, basically you do the body switch back from Olga, and that's the whole thing. Is there's like zero, not quite zero, but he gets the body swap, and it's like, oh, my center of gravity's different because of these giant melons in front of my chest, and I'm shorter.
No longer top heavy.
It's like, but he leaves it there. And it's like you're literally talking about going to the bathroom, and it's like, no, that's not different at all. Like I don't have to. That's not going to be weird going into a woman's bathroom, or being a woman going into a man's bathroom.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, had a few good parts, but yeah, it's just wasn't my thing.
Okay. Well, next month we're gonna read a book that's not gonna get bashed because it's Alex's pick.
Yeah, there's at least some diehard fans of at least the movie version of this book, because it is the movie was made by the beloved Studio Ghibli. I'm trying to remember the director's name. Miyazaki. It's a Miyazaki film. Yeah.
Animation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's beloved animation by probably the world's most beloved animation studio. But we're going to read the book version, and if you watch the movie thinking that you'll understand what we're talking about with the book, you will fail spectacularly because the movie is quite different. It's got some similarities, but the whole...
They basically share a title and the character names.
There's more than just that, but there's entire plot points that are altered or brought to the forefront that are in the background of the book. I am talking, of course, about Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I'm excited for this one. This will be my second time reading it.
Mine too. I read it 6 months ago.
Yeah, I love the.
Alex says, "Oh, by the way, we're going to do this one now."
Yeah, I love the whimsy of the book. It's a lot of fun. So it'll be a good one.
Yeah, so we started this podcast to talk about books we like, not so much about books we hate. I feel like this season we're bashing a lot more books. Yeah, even the books that we thought we liked back in the day.
Yes, time has been cruel to us.
Yeah, so...
when did I stop liking John Dies at the End? That was like a top 5 book for me for so long.
Yeah, so this is for both. For me, it's a very recent read and reread, so I'm definitely enjoying it. And I so this is just gonna be a fun whimsical tale.
Yeah, it's a blast. So it'll be fun.
So yeah, that'll be next month. Don't forget, we post twice every month. We do on the 5th, do our main book club book read, and then on the 20th we do a bonus episode. And so
yes, which one drops February? Oh, I know which one.
Yeah, Alex's this is Alex's new top 5 series.
Yes, it sure is. You'll hear all about it very soon.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on this. It's gonna be a doozy.
Yeah, be gentle.
No, don't be gentle. Alex doesn't like it gentle. He likes it rough.
No, I like a little bit of pillow talk.
Anyways, so like and subscribe, rate us. We're on, go on to Spotify and Apple, do all that stuff. Give us comments. We're on Instagram at Kindle Bookworms. We're on all the major podcast apps, so definitely if you don't like Spotify or Apple, you find us anywhere else. We're on YouTube at Kindle Bookworms. No video, thankfully, but usually we post every episode twice because I haven't figured out YouTube.
So just when you watch it, watch it on one side, and then when you rewatch it, bring up the other one. Yeah. And just you don't have to comment twice; just copy and paste it.
Yeah. If you want to email us, we have an email, kindlebookworms@gmail.com. See, I've been starting to explore that Medium and Substack stuff, posting book reviews of the other books I'm currently reading or have been reading. So if you want to check those out, there's no paid stuff. Just look up me, Joe Kendall, under those sites. I think you'll find me. I also post them through the Facebook and all that stuff. Alex, you have some books for sale.
Yeah, I got The Destroyer and Paul Plimpton versus Ragnarok.
Yeah, so hop on to Amazon. We'll have the link in the description below. Buy those books for Alex. He's got a dog to feed.
Yeah, please make me a bestseller so I can write full time.
That would be nice. He could support me, and we could just do this podcast full time.
Yeah, Stephen King can be my butler.
Do a weekly podcast instead of every 15 days.
Don't do this to me.
So yeah, I think that's all I got, Alex.
That's all I got as well.
Okay.
So that brings us to the end of our show. It's been real. So that was Night Watch by...
It's been real. It's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun.
There's nothing like a good book, and that was nothing like a good book. That was Night Watch by... what's the name again, Joe?
Sergei Lukyanenko.
And I'm Alex.
And I'm Joe.
This has been Bookworms.
Out.